Russia-Ukraine. The war shows no sign of ending. The war between Russia and Ukraine has entered yet another difficult phase. And despite years of fighting, the battlefield remains as active as ever. If you thought the conflict was beginning to slow down, the latest developments suggest otherwise. Long-range drone attacks, missile strikes, shifting front lines, and renewed discussions about military aid have once again placed this war at the center of international attention. For millions of civilians, daily life continues under the constant threat of air raid sirens. Cities far from the front are still being targeted by waves of drones and missiles, while communities closer to the fighting remain caught between advancing forces and ongoing artillery bombardments. Recent reports indicate that civilian casualties have remained alarmingly high, highlighting the continuing humanitarian cost of this conflict. On the battlefield, Russia continues to pressure multiple sectors of the front, with gradual advances supported by artillery, drones, and missile attacks. Ukraine, meanwhile, has focused heavily on striking military infrastructure deep inside Russian-controlled territory and within Russia itself. These long-range operations aim to disrupt fuel supplies, logistics, and command centers rather than simply defending fixed positions. Technology become one of the defining features of this war. What began largely as a continental military invasion has evolved into a conflict where unmanned aircraft play a central role. Drones now perform reconnaissance, guide artillery, attack armored vehicles, intercept other drones, and even strike straight targets hundreds of miles away. Both sides continue adapting their tactics as new technology appear on the battlefield. Another major question surrounds international military support. Ukraine continues seeking additional air defense systems and advanced weapons capable of protecting its cities from increasingly sophisticated missile attacks. Recent discussions have included expanding Ukraine's ability to produce some defensive systems domestically, potentially reducing future dependence on foreign deliveries. Meanwhile, Russia appears committed to maintaining military pressure rather than agreeing to a lasting settlement. Analysts continue to debate whether either side can achieve a decisive military breakthrough, but many believe the conflict is becoming a prolonged war of endurance, where industrial capacity, logistics, manpower, and economic resilience may prove just as important as battlefield tactics. Economically, both countries continue paying an enormous price. Ukraine faces the immense challenge of defending its territory while rebuilding damaged infrastructure and keeping essential services operating. Russia, while continuing military production, also faces the long-term burden of sanctions, defense spending, and pressure on parts of its economy. Both governments remain committed to their objectives despite the mounting costs. Diplomatic efforts continue to surface from time to time, but a lasting peace remains elusive. Temporary pauses in fighting have occurred in the past, yet none have produced a comprehensive agreement capable of ending this war. The gap between the positions of Moscow and Kiev remains substantial, making negotiations extremely difficult. One reality has become increasingly clear. This conflict is no longer defined solely by tanks crossing borders. It has become a contest involving cyber operations, satellite intelligence, precision-guided weapons, electronic warfare, industrial production, economic resilience, and international alliances. Every new shipment of equipment, every successful drone strike, every missile interception, and every diplomatic announcement has the potential to influence the next stage of this war. As of today, there is no clear indication that either side is prepared to abandon its strategic objectives. Military operations continue. Civilians continue to bear a heavy burden, and governments around the world remain closely involved because of the border implications for European security and global stability. The coming weeks will likely determine whether the conflict follows its current trajectory of continued escalation or whether new diplomatic opportunities begin to emerge. Until then, the Russian-Ukraine war remains one of the defining geopolitical conflicts of our time, with consequences extending far beyond the battlefield itself. The headlines may change from day to day, but one reality has remained constant. The war between Russia and Ukraine is far from over. Every sunrise brings fresh reports of explosions, drone attacks, missile interceptions, and fierce battles stretching across hundreds of miles. For millions of civilians, another day begins not with certainty, but with the sound of air raid sirens, and the hope that this won't be the day their neighborhood becomes the next target. Despite years of fighting, neither side appears willing to back down. Russia continues to push forward across several sectors, applying relentless military pressure while attempting to wear down Ukrainian defenses. The advances are often measured in small distances rather than dramatic breakthroughs. But every village, every crossroad, and every strategic position carries enormous importance in a conflict where even minor gains can reshape the battlefield. Ukraine, meanwhile, has adopted a different approach. Rather than focusing only on defending its front lines, Ukrainian forces are increasingly looking beyond them. Long-range drone operations have become one of Kiev's most powerful tools, targeting military infrastructure, fuel depots, logistic hubs, and command facilities far from the front. The objective is clear: make it harder for Russia to sustain the war by striking the systems that keep its military machine moving. This is no longer a conflict fought only with tanks and artillery. Today's battlefield is filled with technology that would have seemed almost futuristic only a few years ago. Small drones hand armored vehicles. Larger unmanned aircraft travel hundreds of miles to strike strategic targets. Electronic warfare systems battle for control of the skies, while sophisticated air defense networks race to intercept incoming missiles before they reach populated areas. In many ways, this has become the world's largest testing ground for modern warfare. But behind every military development lies a far more human story. Families continue to live under the constant threat of attack. Entire communities have spent years adapting to blackouts, damaged infrastructure, and repeated evacuations. Schools, hospitals, apartment buildings, and public services have all felt the impact of a conflict that shows little sign of slowing. For those living through it, there is no such thing as a normal day anymore. The international dimension remains just as significant. Ukraine continues to rely on support from its partners, particularly for advanced air defense systems capable of protecting cities from increasingly complex missile and drone attacks. Discussions continue over expanding military production and strengthening Ukraine's ability to manufacture more of its own defense equipment, a move that could prove increasingly important as the conflict continues. Meanwhile, Russia has shown no indication that it intends to abandon its long-term military objectives. The Kremlin continues investing heavily in military production, while maintaining pressure across multiple fronts. Analysts remain divided over whether either side can achieve a decisive breakthrough, but many agree on one point: this conflict is becoming a battle of endurance. Success may depend less on spectacular victories and more on which country can sustain its economy, replace military equipment, train new personnel, and maintain public support over the long term. And that may be the most important development of all. This war has evolved into something much larger than a fight over territory. It has become a contest of industrial capacity, technological innovation, intelligence, logistics, diplomacy, and national resilience. Every shipment of equipment matters. Every successful drone mission matters. Every intercepted missile matters. Every political decision made thousands of miles from the battlefield can influence events on the ground. Diplomatic efforts continue to surface from time to time, but the gap between the positions of Moscow and Kiev remain enormous. While discussions occasionally raise hopes for negotiations, military operations continue with little indication that either side is prepared to make the concessions required for a lasting peace. That leaves the world watching a conflict whose outcome remains deeply uncertain. The front lines continue to shift. The technology continues to evolve. The humanitarian toll continues to grow. And with every passing week, the consequences extend far beyond Eastern Europe, influencing global security, military strategy, energy markets, and international politics. The biggest question now isn't whether the war is still active. It clearly is. The real question is whether the next chapter will bring a major military turning point, or simply another phase in a conflict that has already reshaped the geopolitical landscape. One thing is certain: the Russia-Ukraine war remains one of the defining conflicts of the 21st century. And the decisions made in the coming weeks and months could shape international security for years to come.